Welcome to another episode from the Liberation Lab platform. We're going to be diving into worldwide education and what it means for us here in America, what we could be growing in, what we could be learning. And I'm so excited to talk to my sis, Adrienne, the Worldwide Educator. We'll be back on the other side talking about global education. What's going on, sis?
Hey, what up, though? You know, I got to give you the Detroit greeting. I don't care where I am in the world. It will be what up, though, every single time.
What up, though? Listen, for those that may not know you, why don't you tell the people who you are, what you do, why you do it, and who you do it for?
Whew, that's a lot. You might want to put that in the chat for me. So, who I am Adrienne Waller. I am the Worldwide Educator. I am what I do. So that's twofold. I have the 9 to 5 what I do. In 9 to 5, I am an assistant principal in the Cayman Islands. But after work, on the weekends, on my vacations, I spend a lot of time supporting educators and realizing their dreams in education, whether that's doing like I do and moving abroad and figuring out what that means, how you do it, everything from who do I sign up to get a job? What's in what should my resume look like? Interviewing skills, or coaching people who are like, hey, I'm already where I want to be, but I want to advance my skills. I want to move from the classroom to coaching. I want to move from coaching to leadership and all of that. So I help in that way. And then, like I said, 9 to 5, I'm working with kindergarten through fifth grade students to do a host of things. And why do I do it? I think that was the last one. Did I get it? You know you on mute this whole time. You went the.
What? That's great. I'm gonna leave that in there as part of the whole recovering perfectionist thing. I'm gonna leave that right there.
I was like, he is. I was like, wait, should I be hearing this? I looked. I was no, he on mute.
I'm on mute. Who you are, what you do, why you do it, and who you do it for.
Oh, great. Oh, those are two great questions.
Yeah.
So why I do it is because I know what I do matters, and I know that there was a journey I was on about who I am, what I want to do, and it didn't come easy. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have anybody really in my corner like, hey, sis, you got this. And I mean, my friends did, but like nobody who was already doing it. So that's the biggest reason why I do it, is because I know I needed it. So I assume somebody else needs it as well. And I know that my presence matters. So my 9 to 5, I know me being in the place I am matters. So that's part of why I do it. And who do I do it for? That's a very interesting question. 9 to 5, my space is extremely white. And so to some degree, I do it for them, for the people they will then interact with. I think it's very important for them to see a powerful 5-foot Black woman who's confident in who I am, who loves on them in ways that people who look like them probably don't, who cares and pushes them and challenges them in a loving place. And so they are a group of who I do it for. But in the evenings when I'm tired, when I'm waking up at 6 o'clock having meetings, I'm doing that for us. I'm doing that for the people who look like me, who don't know how to move, who don't realize that their resume looks terrible, who don't realize, like, how do I answer these interview questions? How do I prepare for this in a way that showcases who I am? Because I really think every part of your educational journey is a showcase of you. Right. Is really, if you can, and I don't mean centering yourself, but if you can sit with self and be confident in who you are and what that means as an educator, you make space for kids to do the same thing. And so I think that's really important, is that I do it for people who want to make space for children, who want to elevate and move forward, who want to be better for their communities. And mainly people who look like me, but I'll work with anybody who wants to do the work of what it means to revolutionize, change, re-envision education globally.
I think that's dope because, when you talk about us moving forward in, liberatory work, there are many folks who almost have this, we need to reclaim what it means and separate ourselves and different things like that. And while I get the notion of where that comes from, like I get the heart of it, like I think about our way forward. And honestly, the way things are set up, and you correct me if I'm wrong, push back, please. I don't think there's a way forward that doesn't build bridges rather than build barriers.
So I love to live in the and. I think you need some people burning bridges and you need some
Mm,
people building them and you need some people envisioning how you can get across through a boat that's not a bridge, right? I think all of those matter. And I think too often we're trying to dictate one way to liberation. And I talk a lot about this, even like when I think about myself as a liberator,
yeah,
is I don't fit that same box. And I think that's necessary. Like if everybody's working in black schools, who's challenging white people to think about black people, right? Like you need people who are willing, but that work isn't for everybody. Everybody's call is not to be in spaces with the, global minority,
yeah.
like white
Come on
folks,
now. Come on now.
like like that's not for everybody. And
Yeah.
you shouldn't take that up. Like I think people need to live in truths that make sense to them. And the more that people can have an ability and a belief in like living in their space, whatever that may be. Like if all of us are doing the same thing, I guarantee we're not going to be liberated. Right. And so I think, yeah, you're right. Some people should be building bridges. Some people should burn them down because that burnt bridge does send a message that some people need. Like some people are going to respond to seeing it
Mm,
inflamed, right?
mm,
But some people are going to be infuriated by that. So you also need somebody who's building that bridge. And then some people don't want to walk across a bridge. They need to be in a boat. And that's where they are right now. And
mm.
some people aren't getting in a boat because they get motion sickness. They're getting, like they're taking the long way, and figuring out a new way to get there that goes around. And I think it's not it's not a or, it's an and, like, and where do you fit and what makes sense for you right now? Because at one point I was burning bridges. Today I'm not a bridge burner. And it's okay to shift in who you are. Like children will shift that, lived experiences will shift that, understanding of self will shift that. So all of that, I think it's an and both.
So I think that that's key. And even in that, you mentioned like I used to be, right? Like I've grown, I've transitioned. So let's take a look back, if you will. Let's take a stroll down memory lane. Talk to me about Detroit, upbringing. Talk to me about, the just some of the things you think about as it forms who you are now, looking back.
So I'll start at 5. And there's plenty that happened in my life before 5, but I think 5 was really pivotal because my mom took us and moved us to Germany, right? Black family living in Germany, and so ironically, when I moved back at 7, I faced the most racism I had ever faced in my life was moving back to America from Germany where the Nazis were, right? Right. This like that was
Wow.
a real brain like mind twist. Like, wait, I went from Nazi Germany to like Michigan, and that's where it was. And mind you, a lot of people don't like people call DC Chocolate City, and I will never take that away from DC. But the blackest city in the nation for many decades over is Detroit, right? And I say that one, so people know. Two, because then when you pit that against like some of the cities that were like surrounding Detroit, they were also very white. You had this big there was a clash, right? You had black, like I come from black, my mother's educated, my grandmother's educated, right? My grandmother was a valedictorian in high school, had a full ride scholarship to go to Morgan State. My mom went to Bowie State. Like going to college was what we did, you know what I mean? Like and then on my other side, I'm by far the most educated person. And so like I have these dualities going on of like, I remember going to Focus Hope in Detroit with my grandmother picking up, food stamp food, like, but then I also had a mother who was making 6 figures, like I'm a and, like my life, I was living in an and, like my weekends were an and, during the week. So, fast forward, by time I'm in high school, I remember my mother buying me black Raggedy Anns. Y'all, I didn't know Raggedy Ann could be black, right? You talking about a redhead doll
Yeah.
with freckles. My mom was like, I remember sitting on the ground at a Hallmark store before Mahogany came out, because my mom said, I don't buy cards for black people with white people on them. People should see themselves in the cards you give them. And so fast forward senior year, I'm in something called Black Awareness Club. My mom's like, why'd you join that? I'm like, this is what you taught me my whole life. Like she
Yeah.
wouldn't buy me white Barbies. Like I had 3 Kenya dolls because my mama bought me a Kenya doll. Both of my grandmas had them. So everywhere I went, I had a Kenya doll. Like that's like the type of family I grew up in. So
Yeah.
I went through college, joined a black sorority, was a speaker of the Black Student Union, led like a group to participate in the Millions More. Like that activism was like what I did. And actually becoming a teacher, I lost myself and like I didn't know how to be active. I didn't know how to be a community activist while being an educator, because so much of my work was activism, right? I was walking kids home and I was showing up to kids' houses like, your son is not doing his work. I was at people's house, like I sat on couches like that. I was that teacher, like
Yeah.
I remember walking a girl home and she's like, Miss Waller, you know that that guy's a rapist. I was like, don't say that. She's like, he is. He raped a girl right there. Mind you, I told you I was walking her home. So I
Yes.
still had to get back to work.
Yeah.
She's like, but the police never caught up. Like, so much of my day-to-day work felt very like active, but then I felt like I was missing like that intellectual activism of like thinking through, things like what Marcus Garvey was talking about. And, like all like that type of work, I missed that. And for years, I felt like I couldn't find it. And so who I am now to me is like, is a merging of like all these stories. And I finally feel like I can kind of put them together, both living abroad as a child, active, like liberative work, as well as education. Cause I was teaching kids when I was little, like every parent teacher conference, they're like, Adrienne talks a lot, clearly. And, she's always helping someone. Like teaching was in my soul very young. Like I had dreams of like what my school looks like, which is why like for a long time I ran from education. And as I come back, I think I've still been running from some of my dreams. Like I know that I need to open a school at some point. Like I have a lived experience that needs to be, imparted on little Black and brown babies, and so when I come back, at some point, somehow, some way, I'm going to start a school or be a part of starting a school, because I think that's so important.
No, you're gonna start it. No, not a part of. You need to start that.
Well, I
Yeah.
think community is important. So I don't like, I like doing things with people. Like I feel like my best work, my best thinking happens in collaborations with others. So
Good.
not in a putting myself down, is I'm better with you. You know what I mean? I'm better with
Yeah.
someone else. And so like if there's somebody on that journey and I can amplify them, or vice versa, they can amplify me, I want to do that.
So let's talk about that. Like I want to get to the school, but I want to backtrack and say or ask, how has your experience globally kind of put the pieces together to where this school, like that we're going to freedom dream about in just a little bit, but how has that experience shaped you and molded you for what's to come?
I mean, that's why the dream has reignited, is because being abroad, I've seen schooling in so many different ways. And I think America presents one version of school, right? And not saying there aren't different schools, you can go to these different places, but essentially there's one version of school. Now, mind you, internationally, it's still not super diverse, but the lack of being bound to test scores to evaluate students and teachers really does actually change what schooling can, how you can envision it, risks that you're willing to take, because you're not bound to something that I don't believe in to hold you accountable and to show your worth, right? I think, you can start thinking about measuring worth, impact, and value very differently when it's not tied to these metrics that we know are, problematic for a list of reasons neither one of us need to go into, because there's plenty of reading you can do about that. So being abroad has helped me in that way. It's also helped me to like learn a lot about self. Like I tell everyone, and I say it repeatedly, I have like a one-liner is I'm a better human because I left, right? So like I'm a better version of myself having left. I'm more patient, I'm more empathetic, I'm more understanding. And those are life skills, right? And in those gaining those life skills, I'm also more centered in like confident belief in self. Like I look at Adrienne and I say, man, I'm beautiful. I'm intelligent. I have so much to offer. Like, yes, starting a business makes sense. Yes, you have something the world could benefit from. And so all of those things are like kind of like things that have impacted both in very small measures, whether they're actually the work at the school or they're just being and living around people who look and see the world differently. And I think that we don't get enough of that. And I didn't realize how American I was until I left, right? Because I'm Black, right? And I'm a woman. So there were so many times I felt un American in the US. And the second you dropped me somewhere else, I was like, oh, wow, I really value some things that I didn't know that I value. I value teachers continuing learning. That's actually not something that a lot of the world does. Like this idea of like continuing education is not an actual globally accepted idea. It's a very American idea. And so,
Really?
yeah. So in most countries, once you're certified, you're certified. There's like no recertification. It's you are a teacher. There's also a lot less, and I have mixed feelings about this one. There's also a lot less oversight. So, like reviewing a lesson plans, the way that happens in the US,
Yeah.
there are a lot of places that don't, like they only do lesson plans as part of their teaching practicum. Once they
Right. Right.
become teachers, there's a trust, and I think there's some value in that too, right? There's a trust that you're a good teacher, right? And so those are really interesting dynamics that I didn't realize, like, are very American that I kind of have brought with me on my journey, some of which I keep, some
Yeah.
of which I question.
Hmm. Hmm. So, uh, the idea and even a thought, for example, that you can look now on this side of things and then be like, you know, no, I know this about myself. I am beautiful. I am smart. I am those things, right? That itself is an act of resistance, and I don't think it gets enough of, you know, I don't think it's said enough from the lips of men, and I don't think it's said enough from just our world in general, that the act of resistance that is, and the carving out, if you will, of of almost like a new space for what it means to be beautiful in a world that did not have lenses for the beauty of Black women, right? um I think about the young Black girls in my classroom right now that I can name, who are struggling to find themselves, um and to see themselves as beautiful. If you, knowing what you know now, could go back and talk to young Adrian who maybe didn't believe it, what would you tell her?
Wow. Your beauty is not defined by the straightness of your hair, by the outfits that you've put together, by whether you wear glasses or not. Because I think I had really defined it in very external ways that were very limited, right? And I think I would really start asking myself, like, why are you not beautiful based off of this? Why are you, like, I would actually start asking myself questions. I wouldn't even tell myself anything, because I literally was just talking. And I think too much of teaching is telling, when real teaching happens through questioning, through
Yes.
allowing somebody else to activate their thought process, which doesn't happen frequently when you're telling people things. So I wouldn't even tell myself, I would change those into questions.
Yeah.
Why don't you see yourself as beautiful? What could you do to actively change that thought? What is it that you do find beauty in that, is part of who you are? Because that's almost basically what I did when it happened. Was I literally had gone to an interview and I was like, why do I feel the need to straighten my hair to get this job?
Mm.
And that troubled me because it was no longer even a thought. It was an assumption that I don't interview unless my hair is straight. Like I couldn't contemplate it. Like, why? And then it was almost a joke that I'm going to show them when I show up. I'm going to show up with did it. But why did I need to fool anybody? Like, why did I need to trick somebody? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with straightening your hair, but
Right.
there was a problem for me that I couldn't see myself as enough if it wasn't. And that's where the real problem was. It's not that, and I would say the same is like, if you like to go between the two hairstyles and you only see value when your hair is, curly, question yourself about that. Like, why is it that all elements of you, all ways you show up, the messy bun, the, braids, like, why aren't all of those versions of beauty? So I've actually been trying to now take headshots. Like I just recently took a new set of pictures with my hair in braids, and I'm going to take another one with my hair curly because I want to showcase my beauty in all these different forms that are me and be able to look at it and go, okay, girl. Like, and you need that moment for self, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And even in that process is, part of the magic of Black women, like I can wear it this way. I can wear it that way. I can do this with my hair. I can do that with my hair. And all of it is me and all of it is beautiful. Right? That acceptance and love and again, that act of resistance is paramount to liberatory work, right? I say all the time, liberation can't happen without Black women, right? And when we fail to see that, to say that, and to empower that, I think then that we're doing more harm than good. And so I applaud, and I want to say and affirm that, for those who may listen to this even after, and they may feel like, no, this is the way I have to present myself because the world is asking me to diminish, the world is asking me to conform. We have to reject that notion and be you in all facets of you.
One thing, and mind you, I'm further in my education journey. So also know that there's some freedom in that, right? There's some freedom in
Yes.
saying I'm 15 plus. I've done, I can read you the resume of things that I've done. So like, I do know that there's freedom in that.
Yeah.
So if you're hearing this and you're in year 3 and you don't feel it, know that that's okay too.
Yeah.
Because I think that's something there's a freedom that I know I have. That I don't want to be, and I talk to clients a lot about this because I deal with a lot of clients who are about 8 years into the profession. Not all, but a lot of them are about 8 years to like 20 years, somewhere in there, people who are close somewhere, give or take from where I am. And I say when they're like, oh, well, I've been told not to put my picture on there because they may not select me on that. I said, why would you want to be somewhere that if they saw your picture, they would have passed you by? I said, I don't want to be. I said, and these are your choice. And I always put it back on my client. You choose. I said, but I'm at a place where I want my picture on my resume because if that's going to deter you from selecting me, I need not interview with you. We need not do this hokey pokey. Like, there's no need. Like, I don't need you, and you don't deserve me if that's where you are. And so I actually wanted to be there. I want to put things on there that show who I am as an educator, what my beliefs are, because I want to be paired and matched somewhere that's going to validate, affirm, and be okay. So my current job, I have 4 to 5 interviews. Each interview, my hairstyle was different. Why? Because that's how I come to work. My hair changes. And so I wanted to see, are they okay with that? Is that going to be okay? Because if you're not okay with it in an interview process, you surely aren't going to be okay with it when it comes down to work. And when I talk to my teachers, I talk just like this. And they don't look nothing like me. Only one. They don't look nothing like me. And I still talk to them just like this. And I go, they'll ask me something. Sometimes I say, I don't know. I don't even really know what I'm doing. And I've said that. And it was funny because on Friday, a teacher told me, thank you for saying that. She said, it was a sub, and she said, you came in the room one day. I don't even remember this. She said, you came and you sat with the kids. She's like, I wasn't sure who you were. She said, and at one point you said, well, go on. I don't really know what I'm doing either. And she said, you gave me so much comfort because I knew I wasn't really sure about what I was doing. She said, and so I felt comfortable to take the risk about just diving in there with those kindergartners. And I was like,
Mm,
oh, I didn't know I did that. I literally was just showing up as me because I don't know. Like, you just finished administrator training. I can guarantee you most of what you learned you're not going to use. Just like your teacher training, most of what you learned you don't use. And it's not to devalue it. It's there in the back of your mind and your reservoir, but the day-to-day practice is about people.
yeah.
And you learn that just from trial and error. You learn that from when I've had to pull a teacher into my office and tell her I was sorry that
Yeah.
I made a mistake. Like that. All of that is like your training.
And I think to your point, like it's the stuff that I've learned when I first started teaching, I've had to go on the process of unlearning since. Right? Like, we think about these institutions of higher learning, and America in particular has this almost grandiose idea of accreditation and degrees equal intellect. And some of the smartest people I know don't have degrees like that. My grandmother, barely finished high school, but she was one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. She she would tell me, uh, so my grandmother and my grandfather from Panama, so they had this accent, um, and I loved it. And she'd be like, I was a supervisor in 3 different countries, and she would tell me like that, and what she was telling, I didn't realize it then. Looking back, she would have said that to me. I'd be like, "That's right, Grandma, you were. Go off. That's right." I would have affirmed it because I didn't realize then what an act of defiance that was, especially for all that she lived through. Right. Um, and so I think about, your position in leadership, where you are, and what you're doing. And so I want to ask, kind of one more leading question before we really get to the school, and I want you to freedom dream for me there. But I want to ask, what are some of in the spaces where you've had to go and work in terms of global education, what are some of the biggest things you've learned there that you think, us here in the States who maybe haven't left should learn from, glean from? And I know you're always an advocate too. I'll add this in here. You're always an advocate if people want to go, to go. So talk to us about that as well.
So I'll start with, if you want to go, go. My biggest, like, the whole crux of what I do is that you have a choice. Like that's the biggest thing for me, is that you have a choice to stay, you have a choice to leave, you have a choice to exit. Like whatever that is, you have agency, right? And I think as teachers, often we forget, we think of one district, one school. We think very, very, this is what's been handed to me. And so this is what I'm able to do. And I think the great resignation is a lot of proof in, like, you have choice, right? But I even think beyond the resignation, some of those people didn't want to leave education. They wanted to leave American education, right? And I literally have, I don't know, I think it just came out, I don't know, but an article coming out in International Teacher magazine about why BIPOC educators should consider moving abroad in the midst of the great resignation, because not all of us want to leave teaching little ones. Like, we actually really love that act of teaching. Now, it's not to say you don't leave, like teach, woke, stuff like that, I think are great, right? And moving and living in those spaces. And if you decide that Liberation Lab becomes what you do, I think those are great as well. But that's not for everybody. That's not everybody's story. Like,
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is not for everybody. That's not what everybody wants to do. Some people genuinely love being in the classroom, but it may not be where they are. And it may not be where they are in their district. It may be having a bit of a commute to go where you're going. So it may be just going a little bit further. But if you're in a space that you know you want to see the world, there are so many opportunities and benefits to considering taking a position internationally. I talk a lot about like I cleared $30,000 of debt in 3 years while traveling to over 20 countries, right? Like I didn't choose. It wasn't a or, it was a and, while still going out, going to paintball, going to brunches, still, hanging out. Like I didn't, and I'm not saying I did everything, right? Like, but I was able to do a lot in a way that I couldn't envision when I was still in the United States, while also having a freedom to relax and not take a lot of work home and not spend any money on my classroom. Like I stopped spending money on my classroom. I didn't know that was possible. So a lot of what I do is really helping people to see what are the possibilities that are out there. Like there's
Yeah.
a whole world that we don't know about. So that's that. In terms of what I've learned about education is some of it's really small things that some of the US is catching up on. Like the Brits do stuff really differently. Like their house system, I think is something really cool to think about building community in that way with
Hmm.
students, with houses. I think that's a really cool way of doing things.
Can
I
you tell
think,
us a little bit about that? Sorry to
oh
interrupt.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So houses, similar to like, Harry Potter, there were these houses. And
Yeah.
so the cool thing about houses is that they mix between classes. So like in one class, you'll say like the school will have like 4 houses, but those houses go between every single classroom at every single grade. And so like there's this camaraderie that happens and healthy competition. And there's so many different ways you can reward students. And a lot of it is by collaboration and how they work with each other. But then you might have a seventh grader at some point working with a second grader, depending on your school structure, because they're in the same house. Or the work that happened in that second grade classroom benefits the house of the seventh grade classroom. So it's just a really interesting thing that you see both as a social means, but it also, I've seen it used academically as well. And so that's not
Mm.
something that is a model that's like a very American model that I think is something that's really, really cool. Australians are really big on like SEL, and there's a lot of work around like social emotional learning in a real authentic way that doesn't necessarily happen. And it's something I'm still learning about, so I don't even want to dive into that, but it's something
Right.
that I know Australia, New Zealand does really, really well. New Zealand's also really good about like dyslexia and like work that they do with students who are neurodiverse. And so like thinking about what that looks like, thinking about training all teachers, right? So like we do a lot of work that's like special like this teacher is this and this teacher is that, and we have like an ELL teacher and we have a special ed teacher. And mind you, I think those still need to be there, because I do think there's something to be said about people who are subject specialists. But I also think there's something to be said when you train everybody to understand how to support a special education student, when you train everybody how to support an ELL student. And mind you, the practices that we know are good for SPED students and for ELL students are actually really good practice for everybody. And so like leaning into that work and really having, spaces where I've seen schools that actually have there's a point where they stop school and everybody's doing literacy. And when I say everybody, I mean they're bringing in the custodians, they're bringing in, this, or they do it through clubs. And so every member of staff actually has to contribute to a club or to contribute to the literacy. And there's a value that's put on all of them really being agents. And how more seen can you be when you get to lead babies? Like, so imagine if we let our janitorial staff and our cooking staff actually lead a course for our kids. Like, what would that change about the value they see in themselves when they come to work, but also how much more respect would our kids give to them, and also see that that's a worthy profession. That's something worth doing. There's something
Good.
valuable in that. And so just two more things that I'll note are like
Please.
in Asia, they have really big classrooms that do a lot of like one problem will take a whole week. And so like challenging kids to really deeply think through this one problem and helping each other out. And they have some very large classrooms. I love that one. And the school I'm at now, um, is what they call a positive discipline school. But one thing I really appreciated about it is I spend a lot of time just talking to my students. So like I'm the behavior person. Um, and I try to be around in a space where kids don't just see me as like a disciplinarian because I feel that's very problematic. Um, right. So like I climb the monkey bars and I slide down the slide and I play tag, like I kick the football, like so my kids see me in all these different spaces. So when it comes time
Yeah, that's
to
good.
have a conversation, we have relationship, right? That was built when I was sitting on the logs,
Yeah.
um, but instead of and parents get frustrated, they're like, what's the consequence? I was like, well, they've already thought through how to handle this situation in the future. They have strategies about like what they'll do next time. They reflected on why what they've done is a problem. But often I get a lot of information from that. So one thing I've implemented both with my teachers and my students is at the end of the conversation, I always say, is there anything else you think I should know or that you want to tell me? And it allows them to just tell me and talk about anything. And I've learned so much by that very simple question at the end. Is there anything else you think you want me to know or I should know? And that's been just liberating for me as a leader about like, oh, sometimes I've realized I've looked at a situation completely wrong just from the question that was supposed to be the last question ends up becoming like, oh shoot, I have to reset because the whole way I went about this was actually kind of wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so key. I think we think often in these spaces that we talk about liberatory work, talk about anti-racist work, and so many different other things. You know, we think about teachers removing and challenging and questioning, their biases and all those things. But how much more for leaders to intently and purposefully listen, to challenge their notions of what they think they know, to question, and then lead with questioning to get to the truth, to get to not even the truth, just understanding, right? Um, I think that's huge because especially if you've seen a student in your office multiple times for similar things, and now they're back again, it's easy to just fast forward. I've already seen this story. Now I'm going to administer this consequence or do this thing, or I don't need to hear you out again, or I'm not going to give you the dignity of being heard, which obviously promotes so many different things that we're trying to prevent. Which brings me, I think, it's a perfect lead into you are, with the brilliant minds that you gather together, going to build a school. Freedom, dream with me. What does it look like, sound like, feel like? What are, top few, I don't want to put a number on it because that's going to be hard, but like top few things you want to make sure happen from the onset of this school?
So one, I'm going to respond to one thing you quickly said. I rarely bring kids to my office anymore. Right. So we do a lot of
Mm,
conversation in the hallways, just walking and chatting and sitting on benches and like taking like just en route. Because there's something to be said about sitting in the office versus just being in conversation next to somebody. So
yeah, that's good.
I very rarely do that. And I just wanted to put that out there because it actually really, I used to, when I first started, it was like, you can go to Miss Adrienne's office. Like, but I've realized that like I go to the students and my school happens just structurally has this little, what we call learning lab that connects the two classes side by side right in the middle. We talk there, so they haven't left. We'll just walk and I'll ask the kids, which way do you want to go? We can go this way or this way. And like, we'll walk as a means of like also helping them to kind of bring those feelings down to
Yeah.
actually be able to communicate in a way that makes sense. So I don't do a lot of office sitting, which makes it hard to sometimes find me. So just wanted to say that because I think that's my job is really about restoring relationships.
That's
And
good.
so I do that in a way that makes sense. Like, who restores a relationship in an office? Like, if you think about the relationships you have, how many were built sitting in an office? Like, that's not where you really
Mm,
build them.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so now getting into my school, one of the key things I really want to see is students very early, very young, being exposed to language and travel. Um,
Mm,
because I mean, how many Black kids have a passport, right? You know what I mean? Like Americans aren't ones to really have passports in general. And then you look at our community, that's even lower. And then actually activating and using that passport early doesn't really happen. So I really would love fifth graders, eighth graders, 12th graders having trips, fourth graders or whatever that looks like, having trips to actually kind of leave and experience the world, and then have access to multiple languages that allow them to actually be in community with the people and the places and spaces that they go to. So those are two kind of in tandem things. While all that's going on, I don't want arts to be auxiliary. I really want arts to be like integral in like the learning that's happening.
Yeah.
In varied arts, right? Like various types of drumming, various types of like, like percussion instruments and, global instruments that, both are exposed, but are also not like extra, but they're literally part of what you're doing. Like if you're writing a folk tale, like what accompanying music are you creating and building and using with that? Which leads into like technology. And so those are probably like the key things. It's like then using technology to supplement that. I really want a school that as much as possible, and I know you can't meet everybody, right? Like, no, and I think that's why there should be many schools, because there's many different types of people. So I'm not trying to meet everybody's needs, but I do want people to be seen, heard, and valued through the school that's created. And so in terms of curriculum, also thinking about like, what does STEAM look like in the school that has true arts, that allows people to learn language, and like, how are we all working kind of in tandem to create that? And those are kind of like structural things, but like what it feels like is a place of laughter and love. I think it should be messy. I think there should be commotion. And like, I never was that teacher who had a quiet classroom. That did, like, and I felt for a lot of my education career that was demonized, like that was like, Miss Adrienne, you need to get your students together. And it's like, well, they are actually together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't look the same. And, great. I hated bulletin boards, right? But I think there's a space for them, right? There's a space for them. That wasn't my thing. So it wouldn't, like I love like interactive, bulletin boards where like kids could do things on the board. And when I was in fifth grade, my kids created my bulletin boards because I was like, I'm over this. It's never going to be pretty. Like, and so, having kids where they feel seen, heard, and valued. And so some of that I can't dream about, because if I dream about it, it's already put limits on it.
That's good.
It's already meant that like there's something there that doesn't fit the kids who I don't know the kids who are there. So how can I fully freedom dream about it? So there's a lot of space to also allow them to dictate what my dream becomes, because it won't be my dream. It'll be ours.
Our dream. Yeah.
So there's that space to kind of say, but none of that may be. I see that evolving in ways that I could never really understand, because students will have voice and agency to make choices and decisions about what's happening and what's going on. And so will parents and community. And so some of it, I don't know. I'll have a base of like, these are values that I have, and I want people who have shared value in space with me, both as deciding that you want to be a student, a family, or, in community with me.
Yeah.
But then there'll be an evolution that also happens there.
That's good. My dream is tied. Like, it's not complete without your dream. I'm going to be thinking about that that's good. So I want to ask you, to round out our time, our final question. Before we do that, I would love for you to tell people how they can connect with you, what you got going on, if they can support in any way. Please plug anything that's going on so we can get it out there.
So I'm Worldwide Educator. I'm most actively on Instagram, y'all. I'm trying to do better on other platforms. I promise you I am. And Worldwide Educator is generally how you can find me. On Twitter, it's spelled with an 8, just because they told me I had too many characters in my name. So I had to shorten it. But some of the things that are coming up, I have, like I said, an article being published both in Travel Noir and International Teacher Magazine. So check those out. I'll send links to those to you later. And then I have a session coming up. It's called the Spring Reflection Reset. And often we start January with these great goals and like what we're going to do. And I believe that our goals become real by reflecting. And so this session is the first Saturday in April. And it's meant to not only dream, but dream in community and to
That's
reflect
good.
on what you've done, but then actually goal set. And so we'll have one each going into each season. So this one is launching you into the spring. There'll be one that launches you into summer, one that launches you into fall. And then, of course, I'll do the little corny thing that everybody does, which is, vision board and all that stuff, launching you into the new year. But this is really like you did that. Now what? Like what's going on? Like it's April, you're a quarter into the year. What have you done? And then what do you still need to do? And so I think it's very easy to spend a lot of time in January doing it. And then we forget where we're going. And so that reflection reset is really about that.
That's dope. That's dope. And you said that they can get information on that on your Instagram. You're going to put more information there?
Yeah, I have a link in there. I'll do another post about it. But yeah, it's through Eventbrite, and anybody who registers, just it so you'll get a freebie if you register before March 20th. There are some extras if you get a VIP ticket, both one-on-one time with me, but also a copy of my affirmations journal that'll be dropping. So yeah, so those are some other things that are coming down. But I think just being there, so people who've registered, they've actually gotten a January and a February freebie already. So there's one last freebie you can still catch. And then I will be then putting out registration for the summer reflection reset. And the same thing will happen that every month you can get something. So over the course of the year, every month you could be getting something that's going to be empowering you and helping you think about what you're doing, whether it's planning or reflecting.
That's dope. I love it. I love it. We'll make sure we put that in the notes here on this video when it posts. So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for your work. Thank you for who you are. And this stuff happens, and people come up, but I'm glad that I could bring up somebody. We've never met in real life yet, but I'm glad to call you a friend and for being in my corner and vice versa. So yeah. I want to ask you a question to end our time, and that is, you have 3 liberatory wishes. Just 3. What do you wish for and why?
I wish that everyone had access to travel to go and see something that's not where they are. I wish that whiteness was not the standard of excellence. And I wish teachers were feeling safe to take risk, so that they could do the same for their students.
So travel, safe to take risks. Say the other one again.
The other one is that whiteness wasn't the standard of excellence.
That's good. That's real good. Wow. Nothing more to say, but wow, that's good. Yeah. I think, I've said it already, but I appreciate you stepping in and having, coming on the platform. And like I said, for what you mean to the community at large. You're actually the second person to come on. And so this is like the infant stages, and you've graced, with your presence. And so I want to honor you and thank you for that. And till next time.
I'm so honored. I know you're supposed to be cutting it off, but thank you. You were my first. I didn't know how IG Live worked till I was on it with you. So like it like you helped birth me into doing that. So I appreciate being on this side.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, listen, thank you so much. This is another episode of our Liberation Lab platform. All things liberation, all things education. Thank y'all for tapping in. My guest has been the one and only Adrienne, Worldwide Educator. Signing off, y'all. Peace.